The Pontchartrain Park Pioneers Oral History Project is presented by the Center for African and African American Studies at Southern University at New Orleans and the following sponsors. The National Park Service, the United States Department of the Interior through the Louisiana Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism, the Louisiana Office of Cultural Development, and the Division of Historic Preservation. My name is Dr. Clyde Robertson. I'm the director of the Center for African and African American Studies at Southern University at New Orleans. I'm also the director, co-researcher, and co-interviewer for the Pontchartrain Park Pioneers Oral History Project. This oral history project examines the lives and experiences of the original homeowners and residents of Pontchartrain Park. The Pontchartrain Park Pioneers Oral History Project's team consists of Professor Connie Abdel Salam, Assistant Professor of History at Southern University at New Orleans, Dr. Mike Mahan, Director of Satellite Communications at Southern University at New Orleans, Ms. Frances Helena, Senior Psychology Major, Southern University at New Orleans. Today's interview is being conducted at Mrs. Margaret Adams' home in Pontchartrain Park. Today's date is July 23rd, 2019, and the time is 4:25 p.m. Please, Mrs. Adams, tell me your name.
Margaret.
Mrs. Margaret Adams. Where were you born?
New Orleans.
Do you remember your birth date?
10/27/30.
And what part of the city were you born in?
Now, I guess, I was adopted, so I don't remember. I don't know all of that. I was an adopted child.
Your adopted parents' names were?
Viola and James Adams.
So your maiden name is Adams as well?
Yes.
No.
Brown. My parents' name was Brown.
All right. And in the background, we will have Mrs. Adams' children, Paula and Terry. When did you meet Mr. Adams?
God, that's a long time ago.
Did you meet him in college?
No, because he went to Grambling.
Did you meet him at LSU?
Maybe at LSU.
Now, let's talk about your education, and then we'll get back to Mr. Adams. What schools did you attend in New Orleans?
I went to Holy Ghost Elementary School, Xavier Prep, Xavier University.
And LSU?
Yeah.
Now, LSU in Baton Rouge or New Orleans?
New Orleans.
So LSU and O. Now, tell me if you remember this story, because I could remember it, hearing it here in your home as a boy. Mr. Adams was known as Fleetfoot.
Fleetfoot, that's right.
And he ran track at Grambling.
Right. Ran track.
And he was here running a track meet, and he saw you. Is that a figment of my imagination, or did that happen?
I don't remember, I'm going to tell you the truth.
All right.
I remember hearing that same story.
You remember hearing that?
I heard that in here.
I don't even remember
in
how
this
I met
room.
him.
Right. So you probably met him at LSU and O.
Yeah.
Do you remember the year that you were at LSU and O?
No, I don't remember that far back.
Do you remember?
I don't remember the year we got married. Do you remember, Terry? My year we got
I would say 54, because she conceived almost right.
I know I
was born in
finished Xavier in
55.
51.
So I would say October 16th, 1954.
So roughly around 1954,
Probably.
you and
yeah.
Mr. Adams were married. Do you remember your major? What did you major in at Xavier?
Vocal music,
And what was your major at LSU and O?
counseling,
And professionally, what did you do?
I taught vocal music for years until I got my master's, and then I became a counselor.
In the New Orleans public schools?
Yes, in the public schools.
All right, you married Mr. Adams in 54. Now, 1954, the Korean War had just ended. Was Mr. Adams in the military?
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he was.
He was?
Yes.
He was in the Marine.
I don't even remember how it happened. I guess he must have been at Xavier. I don't know.
Well, he was in the Marine Corps during the Korean War
Yeah,
and was a combat Korean War veteran.
Yes.
I remember that now.
Yes. Now, you all met and married roughly around 1954. Where did you live with Mr. Adams after you were married?
I know. I think we lived in New Orleans, but we lived in Grambling for a while.
Do you remember living in the apartments next to Dillard's campus?
Yeah.
And before that, you lived uptown, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I lived with my parents uptown in
You didn't
Carrollton.
live with Daddy uptown?
By Xavier. Yeah.
Okay.
So, after you married Mr. Adams, possibly you lived near Dillard,
Yeah.
adjacent to Dillard.
Yeah.
When did you and Mr. Adams become aware of Pontchartrain Park?
We moved to Pontchartrain Park early on. I think when it, I know that part of it wasn't. We were part of the first part of Pontchartrain Park.
And do you remember the year you moved to Pontchartrain Park?
Terry, do you remember the year?
Well, it was before I was born, man. I think it had to be 1955, maybe, because you were here when Paula was born, as far as
Okay, say 1955. That's good.
They bought this house in 1958, like January or February of 58.
58.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so in February of 1958, you purchased this house and moved in. Paula, your oldest child, was 3 years old. 2 years old when you moved in.
Yeah.
Your youngest child, Terry,
Was conceived.
was not born yet.
No.
Okay, all right. So you moved where? What home? Is this your first home
Yes,
in
in
Pontchartrain Park?
Pontchartrain Park.
Which
yeah.
is on Prentice Avenue.
Yes.
Now, were you the first family to move into the Prentice Avenue block?
I think so. I think we were. I think me and Dolores,
Well, you all said y'all moved over here together, so.
yeah, my next door neighbor and I moved into here together.
All right. Did Mr. Adams use his VA bill to purchase the home, his Veterans Administration
I'm sure
bill?
he did. Took advantage of everything he did.
Now, many of the women with whom we have discussed their experiences, and who were married at the time when they moved into Pontchartrain Park, husbands took care of everything. In fact, they simply moved into the home. Did you assist Mr. Adams in pursuing the paperwork, and
Oh no.
Mr. Adams took care of everything? All right. And when you moved into the home, you were a teacher.
Yes.
What did Mr. Adams do
He was a
professionally?
teacher too, wasn't he, Terry?
Yep.
Do you remember how you became aware of Pontchartrain Park?
I know I was living in in one of the Jilt apartments, so it was just a matter of, advertisement.
All right. And you purchased your home roughly in 1958. You financed your home at least in part by way of the Veterans Administration.
Yes.
And you had one child when you moved into Pontchartrain Park in 1958. When was Terry born?
Terry, when were you born?
10/22/1958.
So soon after arriving in Pontchartrain Park, your youngest child was born. Describe your home's floor plan when you moved in. Do you remember how many feet your home was?
No, just this part. That part was added, but this part was there.
So there was a living room, dining room area, a kitchen, 3 bedrooms, and a bath, and also a front, 2 side, and a backyard. Do you remember how Pontchartrain Park was when you first moved in to the park? Were there a lot of young families around? Were there a lot of children in the neighborhood?
Yeah, we had a lot of kids in the neighborhood. Everybody on this block had at least 2 children.
Were they all relatively the same age?
About the same age, yeah.
Which also means then that the parents of those children were
Well,
roughly
about the
your
same.
age. And that would
Yeah.
have been in your middle 20s? Would you have been in your middle 20s? You, unlike many of the families that moved into Pontchartrain Park, you were directly across the street from the golf course and the park itself. What role did the golf course and the playground play in you all's life, in the life of your
golf
family?
course was just there. It didn't. Now the playground was very important because we used to spend a lot of time at the playground. We had a lot of activities there. The kids with the kids. Yeah, the playground was really important.
Well, let's talk about the playground, Pontchartrain Park. Were your children involved in the NORD activities there, the playground activities?
Yep.
What can you describe them? That they play? Did your daughter play softball, run track? Did your son play?
Yeah, I probably.
Yeah, I played softball and I ran track.
And did Terry play any sports at Pontchartrain Park?
I'm sure he did.
He played football.
Yeah, I played football, ran track, baseball. It was year round.
Yeah.
When you talk about the park, what role did you and Mr. Adams play on the park? Were you a part of the Booster Club, for example?
Yes. I don't know. It might have been the president at one time, huh? Sound like.
I don't know that part.
Yeah, but we were involved in those. Oh, we were involved in activities.
Were you a park mother?
No, I'm not familiar with that terminology.
Were you very involved with
Very
the
involved
activities?
Yes,
Did
very.
you drive children to and from games, for example?
We were always involved with the kids. Yeah, we used to almost live over there.
And Mr. Adams, did he coach? On the
Yeah, he
playground.
coached. Yeah, we were involved in it.
Do you remember any Pontchartrain Park legends? Any people in your mind and in your life that stand out?
Remember Mr. Kanye? Lyons County.
Mm-hmm.
You remember Mr. Mack?
Yeah. See, they can remember all of that.
You remember Mr. Calhoun?
Yeah.
Well, these are all people who had major roles in, I know, your children's lives and also in your family as well. With you and Mr. Adams. What were some advantages to raising your children here in Pontchartrain Park?
Ooh, let me get started. First of all, it was a wonderful neighborhood. I mean, you didn't have to worry about anything. And then the playground was right across the street, so you know we used to spend a lot of time over there. There was a good school in the neighborhood, and it was close to church. You know, I could walk to church every day. It just had all of the advantages. It really was a wonderful place to raise a family.
You want to mention shopping?
Yeah, shopping was close.
Mm-hmm. Shopping wasn't too far. Just far enough to keep me from spending all my money.
Were there disadvantages?
I can't think of one. Not one. I have loved living in Pontchartrain Park.
How did you get along with your neighbors?
My best friend and I moved in together. So, you know, I didn't have any problem there. And then all our neighbors were great, huh, Terry?
Yeah.
All that, because my cousin was right across, you know.
A couple of doors down.
Couple of doors down. We were just like one big family in the neighborhood.
That was Frank Merrick.
Uh-huh, Frank Merrick.
Now, adjacent to Pontchartrain Park for many of the years that you all were here was a neighborhood known as Gentilly Woods. For many of the years that you lived here, Gentilly Woods was all white.
Mm-hmm.
What types of experiences did you have traversing, moving through Gentilly Woods, coming back and forth?
Well, I went over there just for Mass. I'd go to the church. And I didn't have any problems. I don't remember having any difficulties.
Your children were at, what schools did your children attend?
You all went to St. Gabriel, didn't you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Did your children experience any difficulties?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Ms. Adams, do you remember the ditch?
Yeah.
You remember the ditch?
It's not there anymore?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
Yes, it is. It doesn't have the
Any
significance.
That it
And
was.
of course,
Yeah, it doesn't have any water.
It had water only once that I know of, and that was Betsy.
Yeah.
But it has more of a greater significance for many of the younger people, because those of us who had to go back and forth Gentilly Woods knew that ditch was the line, was the part of embarkation between Pontchartrain Park and Gentilly Woods.
Yeah, well, that was understood, but that was no problem for me, because I didn't want to live in Gentilly Woods
And she
anyway.
wasn't on foot. She drove
Yeah,
everywhere
yeah,
she needed to
yeah.
go.
Do you know if Mr. Adams had any knowledge about the problems that your children had in Gentilly Woods?
Terry,
Did he have any knowledge?
Did he know? Did your children come home and share with you some of the experiences?
Dr. Robinson, I'll say this. He was probably more aware than my mother, but certainly both of them were aware of incidents either within Gentilly Woods or within St. Gabriel School. Because certainly I wasn't necessarily a model student. So yeah, that I'm sure they were aware of. But that was unrelated to Gentleman Woods specifically.
Mrs. Adams, there were certain legends, stories, urban myths that existed in Pontchartrain Park. One was right across the street in the playground, and on the golf course.
Right.
It was the Lady in White. Do you remember the story of the Lady in White?
You remember the story of
Yeah.
Lady? You do?
Yeah.
Tell me no.
And Nanny go down.
Huh?
What?
Yeah.
Nanny go down.
The story of the Lady in White that permeated throughout Pontchartrain Park for at least 10 years.
You're kidding.
Yeah, no. But it was a story of a woman who, and there may be some truth to it, but it was much more benign an experience than people let on. It might have been a lady who had a breakdown and was found wandering the park one evening during the summer, wearing a long flowing gown and her gray hair blowing in the wind. A young child saw the woman and ran to the park screaming about a lady in white, which cleared the park. Terry and I were probably on the park at that time. And what eventually happened was that, of course, the benign story of a woman wandering the playground, or wandering the golf course, became a horror story. And as the years progressed, every spring and summer, there were at least 2 or 3 sightings of the Lady in White, who then took on the character of a child-consuming, murdering fiend. The Lady in White. So the Lady in White is one of those stories that permeated Pontchartrain Park, as well as she lived on Nanny Goat Island, which was one of the little places in the lagoon.
Over here.
That's the first
That
time
was-
I'm hearing anything
Oh
about
yes,
that.
yes, yes. The Nanny Goat. The Lady in White. Now you said, Mrs. Adams, that you actually attended church near the neighborhood. Of course, we have 3 churches here, one right next door to you. But which church did you attend?
St.
again?
Gabriel,
St. Gabriel Catholic Church. And you were a major part of that church.
Well, was active. Yeah.
Yes. For many years, you also directed the choir.
Choir, yeah.
In fact, you attempted to recruit me. All right. Now, you've lived in Pontchartrain Park nearly continuously since 1958. Before Hurricane Katrina, there was, of course, Hurricane Betsy in 1965. Do you remember your experiences? For example, did your home flood during Hurricane
I
Katrina?
don't remember experiencing that.
Hurricane Betsy in 1965. All right.
Clyde, I just want to correct a couple of things, because they lived here, Pontchartrain Park, to about 1984 is when they moved to Grambling. And they were in Grambling for 16 years, and then moved back. And so at the time of Katrina, my mother was actually living in Gentilly in a house that I bought for her right off of Franklin Avenue.
For Katrina.
For Katrina. But she was spending time between here and, between here and that house. But she's been back in this house since, what, 2000?
Daddy, we had to bring Daddy back home when he broke his neck in 2001. So,
So in 1965, however, you were here in this house. 1965 for
Yes.
Hurricane Betsy.
We were here.
Did the home flood?
No.
Was there any damage
No.
to the home?
Water got close.
Yeah, it came up. It was
Came up.
lapping at the front door.
Right.
Because many houses in the park, including my own, were flooded
Right.
on that Prentice Avenue. Mrs. Adams, before you moved to Grambling in 1986, did you see the park, Pontchartrain Park, changing? Did you see new neighbors coming in? If so, were they, did they have the same ethics in terms of keeping your property up, getting the children?
I don't remember that. I don't remember.
And you moved to Grambling in 1986. Why did you move to Grambling in 1986?
My husband was from Grambling, and he just wanted to move to Grambling.
Mr. Adams became, if I'm not mistaken, the police chief at the university.
I believe so.
That's true.
And then you moved back shortly thereafter, and then Mr. Adams moved back in 2001. You mentioned that Mr. Adams broke his neck. How did Mr. Adams break his neck?
Paula?
He what he had was a blocked carotid artery. He passed out in the bedroom, and he fell badly. He got his neck wedged between the nightstand and the iron bed frame, and that's where he fell. And he didn't have any motor control. He was still moving. He could move limbs, but he couldn't feel the movement and he couldn't control the movement. So they eventually had to replace some of the cervical discs, 1 or 2 discs in his neck. But that's what happened. He passed out and just fell badly.
And that happened here in the home.
Easter Sunday. Right before we buried Mama Mamie, remember?
Yeah.
Now, Hurricane Katrina was not experienced here, but Mrs. Adams experienced Hurricane Katrina on Franklin.
That's where she was living at the time.
All right. Were you happy, Mrs. Adams, to return back to your home here in Pontchartrain Park when you eventually returned?
Oh, yes.
Why were you happy to return home?
Well, it's his home. I mean, there's no place like home, but there's no place like Pontchartrain Park either.
Or have many of your neighbors returned?
Oh, yeah, huh?
Not many.
Not
many?
So many of the
Dolores is dead, huh?
Yeah, but she didn't come back after Katrina anyway.
She didn't?
She did not. The Mitchells didn't come back. The Merricks didn't come back.
Christophs didn't come back.
The Christophs didn't come back.
The Henrys.
Huh?
The Henrys tore their house down.
They've
Oh, down the
subsequently,
Miss
rebuilt.
Yolanda, the Henry, she didn't come back after the storm, and she tore her house down.
But she's back now.
She's back now. Yeah, they kept the property.
Mr. Williams came back.
Yeah, Mr. Truly came back, and the Youngs came back.
In light of
That way.
your new neighbors, Mrs. Adams, do you think the neighborhood has changed?
I don't know, 'cause this is my neighborhood right here.
Well, it hasn't changed. Are you aware of Wendell Pierce's post-Hurricane Katrina efforts to provide people with new homes? Wendell Pierce, the big Hollywood actor who grew up here.
I remember Wendell, but I remember that. I wouldn't have been involved in that anyway.
Yes. He's built several new homes around the neighborhood.
That's nice.
Even though some of these people have not returned home, are you still in contact with many of the, well, at least some of the people who might have lived in Pontchartrain Park?
Not many. Not really. At my age, this is my neighborhood right here. When I was young, I used to be involved in St. Gabriel. I would be involved in Pontchartrain Park Community Center, but I don't do anything else. I really don't. I don't even know my neighbors. I don't know, and my next door, she and I moved in there together, but I don't. Dolores must be dead by now, huh?
Oh, for a few years.
I don't even know who my neighbors are. I don't know why you interviewing me, because I don't know anything.
Believe me, what you're saying is very important to the project. I'm going to ask this question, and the answer may or may not be apparent. Do you miss your past life?
No, I'm satisfied with what's today. I'm thankful to the Lord to be here, and I'll be thankful when He takes me away.
And you have a lifetime worth of memories here in this home with your family in this neighborhood. What are your most memorable moments in Pontchartrain Park?
The one thing I remember most about Pontchartrain Park, besides playing bridge at the community center, is working with the youngsters out at the playground. I was really active at the playground, and that was important to me. Because, we got this beautiful golf course that's right across the street from us, and my husband didn't even learn how to play golf.
I don't think that's odd. During that period.
But he was athletic, but he didn't, and this one didn't learn either.
Nah, you remember Paul Rand played golf over there all the time. He tried to teach. You remember Bro Mitch?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Remember Mitchell?
Yeah, friends, yeah, but
He used to play over there all the time.
you think with a golf course, and especially an
He was too
athletic
busy working.
person.
Shoot, he had, for as long as I can remember, he had 2 jobs.
Always.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about, Mrs. Adams, that you'd like to share?
Nothing except that Pontchartrain Park was a wonderful neighborhood to live in and to raise children, and because we had everything we needed here. We had the church not far away. We had the playground. We had lovely neighbors, and it was just wonderful living here. It really was.
There was also Southern University at New Orleans,
right.
And some of the people I interviewed say that their children went to the library at SUNO to do research. And did Terry and Paula do?
Yes.
Paul, you used to?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I know many of the children, including myself.
I don't know if Terry did. I know I did.
We would go to SUNO sometimes to research, particularly if you knew the librarian, as my mother did.
Yeah.
Well, Mrs. Adams, this wraps up the interview.
I enjoyed it.
What you shared with us, as I stated only moments ago, are things that are mightily important to the project. And
Good.
when correlated with what the other elders contributed, will help add some vision of Pontchartrain Park that's going to be important when researchers start really putting the story of Pontchartrain Park together.
Well, I'm glad.
So this is very important, and we certainly appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. This has been a presentation of the Center for African and African American Studies at Southern University at New Orleans and the following sponsors: the National Park Service, the United States Department of the Interior through the Louisiana Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism, the Louisiana Office of Cultural Development, and the Division of Historic Preservation.